Replace social justice conversations with ones about prejudices. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and a lot of people assume that since I am against fourth wave intersectional feminist social justice warrior culture, then that means I must be against social justice, or even social progress, or whatever, though all of that ends up boiling down to an irritating semantic discussion. Ultimately, if quote-unquote social justice was actually fair and just, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But we have seen that it isn't. What is sold as social justice is generally mostly about attacking the average citizen for being white, male, cis, or even just having a certain harmless belief like being a nationalist. If they were attacking the white straight men in charge of everybody, maybe they'd have a point, but that's not what they do. They attack the average people around them. Even worse, because of the notion that social justice generally pans out more along the lines of social revenge in practice, in which Black and Indigenous young people, for example, seek special treatment socially on college campuses and accuse non-racist people of being racist for the very act of not being racist, like in the case of Brett Weinstein, it would be outlandish to pretend that this is justified. SJWs don't want equality or fairness. They want everybody to judge people as virtuous based simply on being a member of a historically disadvantaged identity. And they want these people with these historically marginalized identities to never be challenged intellectually, because that is seen as an affront to their all-important lived experiences. It's an entirely backwards way of unjust thinking. Instead of privileging white straight males as being the only people allowed to hold positions of power in our nation, the way it was in centuries past, people seek to reverse this and put white straight men on the bottom. Do you think I am exaggerating? I think you're either willingly deluding yourself or you haven't watched enough anti-SJW YouTube videos exposing footage of these people, because there's endless examples that show that this is exactly what they want. That all said, this entire white straight male hating paradigm is wrong, obviously, not just because it's wrong to discriminate against white people, men, straight people, cis people, or anybody, but even more so. Targeting majority groups is just a monumentally stupid idea, because eventually, if you keep poking that sleeping giant, it will at least swat at you with one arm and you'll be fucked. There are legitimate racists out there, and despite what SJWs often claim, new racists are created every day. I have talked to at least a few people online that admit to being racist against Black people, who claim that they did everything they could not to be racist for most of their lives, until they witnessed too much violence and other non-apologetic bad behavior from Black Lives Matter supporters and other Black people, and now these people are full-blown racists. Obviously, blaming every problem on one group and excusing every action of other groups is not helping anybody ease any tensions, which would seem like common sense. But we have to remember that there have been billions of dollars pumped into places like MTV and BuzzFeed for social justice programming to deliberately tell people to act against their own common sense. So what would be better? What would accomplish true social progress from all sides? Is it possible? Should we just give up on the social justice conversation? Well, personally, I think that there is something more productive, and I have a strategy for people to use if they find circumstances in which they can foster an environment of communication among a specific group of people. I think people should talk about prejudices instead of social justice. It's worked for me in formal classes in the past, and I think it can work again in the future. Instead of teaching people this twisted version of social justice, people should replace that with an open-ended discussion about everybody's prejudices. I'll repeat, talk about everybody's prejudices. I mean, we can all admit that we have prejudices, right? Some of these prejudices are perfectly justified, like black people avoiding KKK members, and some prejudices are unjustified, like women assuming that men's rights advocates are all misogynists. More so, when people talk about their racial prejudices in a neutral setting, a lot can be accomplished. If you allow a black person to tell their group honestly why they might have issues with white people and a white person to do the reverse, people can start to see eye to eye and learn about things they have never considered. But does this happen in social justice courses? Absolutely not. They aren't designed to get anybody to see eye to eye, but rather to blame white straight men for everything and absolve everybody else from any guilt about hating white straight men. It's non-constructive, and we're now seeing the effects of just how non-constructive it really is months into Trump's presidency. So I say this: don't discuss social justice if for no other reason than because it is completely arrogant and intellectually dishonest to think that you get to define what social justice even is. Or anybody does. Who gets to decide what is socially just all across the board? Nobody. Nobody has that answer. Instead, you should have discussions about your own prejudices with people who are willing to admit their own and see if you can't make some progress. You own your own prejudices. And if you admit to your bullshit and you can get other people to admit to theirs, chances are you will have a productive discussion. And you can both leave the room with less tension than you started with. Whereas with social justice courses, there have been studies that show that people feel worse about things afterwards. After they leave a social justice course, everybody thinks that everybody is racist, because that's what they fucking teach you. I forget which studies they are exactly, but Jonathan Haidt references them, so look up Jonathan Haidt and some of the articles that he's written. You can probably find them. Alright, that's all I have to say for this video. Drop me a comment. Hit the bell button so you don't get unsubscribed. It's happening again, and stay tuned.